Okay. Commissioner Urbani. Commissioner Barnes.
Here.
Commissioner Hawley.
Here.
Commissioner Chorin.
Here.
Commissioner Schaefer. Alderman Stralchuk.
Here.
Mayor Nerben.
Here. Off the top here, we've got 3 canceled items. So if you're here for one of these 3 items, you get to leave early. First canceled item is the Concordia Fish Hatchery building design. That got pulled at the last minute. So if you got a card for that and wanted to come, it's not going to be on the agenda tonight. The next is Refresh Aesthetic building design. That too has been pulled at the last minute. And then a sign waiver for Landmark Credit Union. Those 3 items are not on the agenda tonight. So that brings us to our first real item of business. James Hoffman, the why do we have to do the minutes? Okay.
Move to approve the
Who
minutes.
wants to move to approve the minutes?
Second.
All right. Motion and a second. Any comments on the minutes? Hearing and seeing none, all is in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you for that, by the way. Now that the minutes are approved, James Hoffman, the applicant is seeking a fill permit approval to allow for 89,000 cubic yards for fill and berm construction for the parcel located immediately north of 13062 Northport Washington Road. And I think staff is going to give us a quick overview about what this item is all about, if Cole's microphone will work.
Not having good luck with that one. Okay, so Hoffman, just for some context, I kind of broke this up into 3 items because there's kind of 3 different pieces to their application here. I have it up on the screen, although it's kind of hard to see. It's also part of page 16 of the packet. So the first item is 18,000 cubic yards of fill over basically the entirety of the site. I think the goal for the applicant was just to bring the site up a bit. So that'll be about a foot or 2 throughout the entire parcel. Item 2 is the east berm. There's a 20-foot berm there on the right side of the screen proposed, and that is along the I-43 corridor. And then item 3 is on the left side of the screen there, and that is a 25-foot berm proposed along the Port Washington Road corridor. And just for some context, the applicant submitted a reference to a state statute that kind of explained that what they felt was not basically that fill along a transportation project for the state is not applicable. I should say the local zoning ordinances aren't applicable to the fill and its placement. We had to ask our city attorney about that. We unfortunately weren't able to provide a letter for you guys tonight like we wanted, but we are proceeding as in that ordinance doesn't apply, or I should say that state statute, and that is in the packet as well if you would like to look at that one. So for item 1, raising the property grade of the site, that's just spreading it throughout the entirety of the parcel pretty much. The only staff conditions that we are proposing is just the submittal of a grading plan for our review so that we can review for adjacent drainage patterns, making sure we're not causing drainage issues. That's pretty typical with our fill permits. And then we just wanted to check that the applicant was obtaining an NOI from the state, which is required for any disturbance over an acre. And then item 2 is the 20-foot berm along the 43 corridor. That is a 56,000 cubic yards. We are recommending approval with those 3 conditions listed underneath on page 12 of the packet. That would be for the applicant to submit a final berm design and a landscaping plan set for community development to review. The berm design would be reviewed by engineering for our standard berm, specifications. We have specifications on the slope, maximums of the side slopes, as well as the height of 4.5 feet, and that's obviously why it's here, both for the volume and the height of that berm. The applicant was mostly doing this for reduction of sound from the freeway. And then item 3 there along Port Washington Road, the 25-foot proposed berm. Staff would recommend to table that item as we didn't feel that that scale of berm would fit well on that corridor.
Thank you. Any other comments from the commissioners or questions for staff? Commissioner Schaefer. Oh, are you?
Missing links.
Trying to picture that
Which part of missing links? The front or the back or?
off the freeway.
There's a berm on the north side. There's a big hill on the north side.
Because they have mounds kind of scattered throughout the course.
And on the south, too, huh?
I would say those are probably around 15 feet the most.
Commissioner Chorin.
Now, the item number 1 where the fill is across the entire site, what are we talking about, depth?
They didn't submit a plan for the entire site, but if you just divided that volume basically throughout the parcel, it was about 1 feet or 1 foot, 1 foot to 2 feet, I would say.
I guess that's a question for the applicant then.
Right.
I mean, it's all wooded. It's going to kill all the trees, I would suspect.
I think it's the trees the applicant also planted many years ago. You have another question? Go ahead.
I guess, maybe I'm jumping the gun with the applicant, but I'd like to know what is the intent of the site? I mean, with what you're planning on doing, it certainly isn't going to remain an empty lot or a future tree farm.
Well, we had originally hoped that those trees would be used for subdivision screening all around Mequon. And then through various things that have happened in the community, at one point then, shortly after we planted them, that 15 acres got rezoned 3 5-acre residential parcels, which didn't make any sense. So then we sat tight for a while on that. Then eventually we had the economic crash as the trees were getting big enough to move, and then nobody wanted the trees. At that point, the Dothostroma was kicking in and the needlecast was kicking in, and we had tree experts look at all those trees, and they basically said, you're now passing the ability to move them and do something with them. So they've now just sat for several years. When the contractor, that's one of the contractors on I-43 DOT, contacted us, which was in late April, and they mentioned that they had fill, then my creative brain got going and said, what can we do with this marginal piece of land to make it more advantageous? And yes, in the last couple of years, it has been rezoned multifamily, probably some kind of multifamily. I guess the word senior is put on that, although Kim assures me it's not just for seniors, it's for some form of multifamily. So we said, berms are going to be the biggest thing to help that, what is really a marginal piece of property at this point. And the DOT contractor would then bring the fill, distribute the fill, grade the berms, and then it would be our responsibility to landscape the berms. So that's the rationale for the whole thing.
Commissioner Barnes.
Yeah, maybe it's a little bit of a procedural question. There's reference that I think you make in here regarding grading and landscaping plan will be presented to the planning commission, et cetera. Maybe this is a procedural question in the city, I'm not sure. I'm just not clear on, what are we saying is okay and what detail is it that we routinely do thereafter in terms of separating that, in terms of knowing what's being committed to here.
So the three different parts would be with the item 1 filling throughout the site. The only thing that would that we would have the applicant do before that would be at least that preliminary grading plan, so we could evaluate the drainage and make sure everything's not causing issues next door. And then with item 2, we would require that before they would be allowed to bring fill onto the site, but they would not be able to basically finish the berm until they would get that that final design approval and landscaping plan approval.
Could be whatever subsequent grading might be required more than being envisioned right at the time. And does that come through the city staff then, that direction?
We would have that come back to planning commission as well. So the dates we put on here for that would be that they would need to submit the final design by February 1st, 2024, and then I think the landscaping would need to be then planted by June 30th of 2024. So that'd be kind of the timeline.
It's really not a procedural question, though, and it's something that we're compelled to bring up tonight. We did submit the application on the 15th of September, and then on the 16th of October, we were contacted by Cole asking to meet prior to their write-up, which occurred the latter part of last week. And we've now got some communication gaps going on because my application specifically talked about, first of all, that the timing of all of this would have to be in sync with the DOT's situation, that I can't control the DOT's timing. And timing would be by the end of 2024 to finish berms, et cetera. Potentially, depending on bad weather, say a year from now, landscaping would occur into 2025. We have no problem with erosion control. We have no problem with tracking pads. We have no problem with all of those things that a developer typically does in Mequon, consistent with making sure that we don't have any problem with the rest of the community. We don't have erosion, any of those. We have no problem with that. We have no problem with the DNR notification permit, the WRAP or MRAP, whatever that's called. We, though, have to give the DOT contractor full control of the site during their work on I-43. Currently, they're working down near Nicolay High School. Currently, they've got a lot of fill at Nicolay High School. We were not able to sign their document, even though they said that we did not need Mequon approval. We did not want to sign their document and go ahead until we had this meeting tonight. In our 44 years of working with the city of Mequon, we've always been a collaborative partner with the city to do things in a manner that everybody is in accordance with and we reach an agreement with. But we have had some difficulty in communicating over the last couple of days the fact that the application and the things put on our application are now not consistent with the write-up from staff. Our berms would be taller, our berms would be steeper, but we are operating under the premise that the berm is a means by which to display attractive landscaping. We built the berm in front of the Pines subdivision, which is also taller than current statute, and we feel that's one of the most attractive berms in Mequon. We landscaped over half of the houses in the Pines subdivision. I personally designed the landscaping. We know how to do an attractive design on this berm, these berms that we are talking about. And by getting the DOTs through the contractor's cooperation to be able to get this fill, we're able to do something that we can't do otherwise. To try to buy this fill commercially and do it later on, all on our own, would never happen on this property, just far too expensive. So we're trying to do something now that makes this all happen. My original communication to Kim was back in May. Through just the whole process, we all know things take time. Time has marched on. I'm almost running out of time with the DOT contractor signature that is required. And I agree, this takes some degree of trust on the part that we would come back to staff with our final grading plan and landscaping plan and find it attractive. But I can't just dump a bunch of fill on this property tomorrow and then in the coming months have them move it again and grade it. That's not, they won't do it, and it's not even the right way to do the project.
In my experience, that is a routine challenge that the DOT faces, and so I guess I was gonna be posing kind of a wonderment on how the control of whatever quantity of fill is established, agreed upon, how you get control of that.
We can turn it off anytime we want to turn off the fill coming. At the time we had chatted with the mayor over a month.
From my own experience, I know that those are circumstances that can come up,
Right.
so it's making sure that.
The suggestion was made that we do not come back and change what we want and ask for more later, that we try to come up with a max kind of thing now. We studied the height of the sound deadening concrete walls that are currently being installed along I-43. Those walls, most of them are in the 20-footish range. We studied the fact that we wanted to have at least the first floor, whatever got built, sound blocked from the freeway, maybe a little bit of the second floor, depending on when it's located, of whatever it is that we might build. And we're just trying to find a balance with all of this and take an opportunity that I think works to everybody's benefit.
Maybe if I, just a side question, and from my own experience, I used to be with the DOT many years, a while ago, but special arrangements on hauling directly from I-43 right away into the adjacent property, so that you don't have hauling on, in this case, I guess, Port Washington Road, is it, or, and I don't know if that's something that's been talked about or considered. It's not a routine item, but it.
Well, it does also say that we would agree to a haul route that would get specified, and that's another thing that I wanted to bring up. The DOT contractor said some may come in from the north, some may come in from the south. It would come via Port Road, but they can't tell me now exactly, depending on how things go. So we can't specify a haul route.
I'm just bringing that up for
It's good to be aware of.
aware of, and if there's a need, crucial need on condition here.
Commissioner Urbani.
I see a pond on your map. Is that an existing pond? Are you planning to create the pond in conjunction with everything else? And is it meant for runoff?
It is not an existing pond. It is in the southwest corner, which is what you're looking at, because the top of that plat is north. In the southwest corner, somewhere through there would be the likely place for a retention pond with a future development. It's not an existing pond. I simply put it there as kind of a graphic placeholder that would not be a place to put a berm right now.
Any other questions? Or Commissioner Strelchak?
Yeah, I've got a couple questions. So, as we bring in the fill, this question for staff, as we bring in the fill and you're analyzing the water flow, and as you know, water's like the hottest topic on any agenda item for anything. What I don't want to do is approve an island right here and then have no water be able to flow through the property because it's at a height with 20 to 25 foot berms plus an elevated height throughout, where water's not doing what it needs to do across the property and it's backing up on others. So how are you addressing this with this recommended approval tonight?
The two main things we look for is that it's both following the natural, like whatever he's proposing is following the natural drainage patterns that already exist, and number two, not obstructing anything upstream. So this site is actually, it really doesn't accept much from off-site, if any. I think the only bit would maybe be a little bit from the north that kind of follows the property line straight to the west to Port Washington Road. So by bringing the site up, it really shouldn't cause any drainage issues, but we just wanted to make sure that we have a plan that we can hold them to and make sure they're not, going to others' property or doing things that we aren't permitting.
And this is my first property where we've had this much fill coming in. So as a future development would come, what would we use to analyze the impervious surface and the required water detention areas for that? Would it be this new level, or would it be the previous existing level?
What that would all be based on is how much impervious surface they're adding with streets, houses, all of that. The level of basically flow rate that they would be able to discharge would still be based on what we have here uniquely in Mequon is pre-settlement conditions, which is basically assuming if the site was completely wooded and has very slow and low amounts of runoff. So that's what they would still be restricted to should the development come forward.
Yeah, and then just for the record, I'm supportive of the trees. I mean, I love that lot, the way that it looks today, but, based on tree disease and everything else, I mean, obviously that can't continue. And to my knowledge, those aren't protected trees anyway within the city. So, so with the city attorney, we're waiting on a report. You were kind of back and forth in your description with that. I want to make sure that, what we're approving is going to be aesthetic. I don't have a problem with a berm. If it is multifamily, I think some kind of a berm would benefit that property and the people that would live there or a future business in that space. What can we and what can't we restrict tonight, or what can we do based on your knowledge? You've got a recommendation to table some of it and vote on some of it tonight. So I'm just trying to wade through what staff's recommending here.
I think that's why they broke it up into multiple steps in the report. So
I got the 3
Yeah.
steps.
I think they're giving us some hints. So my personal opinion, I think we should take items 1 and 2 up now. We can talk about the third. I think the state statute's pretty clear. We have to let him take the fill from the freeway project. I think where there's some debate is where we control berm design. Berm design is not just accepting fill. I think we still have some ability to regulate and control that. But I certainly have no problem with creating a sound buffer for I-43. There's some people that aren't getting one that are begging for it. That certainly makes a lot of sense. And even as long as it doesn't create drainage problems, to everyone's point here, even bringing the lot up, if you can accept the fill and it makes the property better, as long as it doesn't cause a drainage problem for anyone else.
Right.
I see no reason to get in the way of that.
Agreed.
So why don't we take up the 2 items first, and then we can talk a little bit more about the third, rather than getting them all muddled together. Does anyone have any questions on just the base grading or the base fill to bring the site up, and the berm to serve as a sound wall for I-43? Does someone want to make a motion on one or both of those 2 items?
I think there's an issue though with the dates we have to resolve.
With the what?
The dates, because we put in specific dates that things had to be accomplished by. And I think the applicant's stating that he can't meet those dates and doesn't have control over those dates. And I think that's one of the things we're not really 100% clear on what our authority is based on the statute or not. But I think our concern was we did not want this to go, I mean, we're talking, I think, total, 9,000 truckloads to this site. And we did not want it to go on for 2-3 years, so we had to come up with a timeline. If the applicant has got a different timeline, we're open to hearing it, but I don't think we can just leave it open-ended.
Well, I think I heard earlier the end of 24 for the fill and sometime in 25 for the landscaping. That's not too far off. Maybe it's about 6 months off the proposed timing that's here. And we do give people extensions routinely if there's mitigating circumstances. I mean, how many times have we given people extensions on development agreements in town center because supply chain disruption, COVID, you name it, there's things that happen. I agree with not leaving it completely open-ended, but would that be, would the end of 24 for the fill and by mid-25 for the landscaping be acceptable as a starting point for now?
Yes, that works with the DOT contractor.
Okay. So if someone wanted to craft a motion that incorporated such an amendment, we could entertain a vote on it.
I got one more
question
Sure, go ahead, shoot.
prior to
shoot.
that, if it's okay. So part of our agreement on the Highland Road interchange was that we wouldn't be asking for money to redo Port Road. And now the highway project's bringing in a nice opportunity for, you know, somebody that's been in the community for a long time. And we've got 9,000 loads, up to 9,000 loads of fill coming in. And I'm almost 100% sure that road is going to take a bit of a toll in that process. How do we identify where we're at today, monitor that, and then put that back on the I-43 project if there is any damage versus the applicant here today? Okay,
Sorry, that was the agreement, sorry, I have my mic off. That was the agreement we made with
okay.
the folks who,
County road, so the county's responsible.
yeah, it's county's road too.
The county's responsible, but you and I all know who's going to get the calls. It's going to be us. So, all right.
What's often done is, you know, pretty careful documentation of the existing condition, rearrangements with local for possible paving by whomever is responsible. It is a common circumstance.
But I agree with the nature of that. If it's the county's road, but
Yeah.
we don't want, we all pay county taxes here in Mequon too. So we don't want them destroying the road and then not picking up the tab to fix it. But so we can just monitor that, but there's no ability to regulate based off that.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight that as a concern so that we had it documented in the minutes for tonight. Again, so I move for approval on items 1 and 2 with the new dates showing landscaping to be completed by, what was it, May or June of,
Was
yeah, June 30th of 2025. And the fill of 12/31/24. Thank you. Is that a second?
The slopes that were identified in staff's write-up are different than what we put on our concept topographical map. And we need to have the slopes that we put on our concept map, or the berm to get the height we need will occupy way too much square footage on the property. I'm estimating now that we will be taking approximately 20% of the property, maybe a little less, but approximately 20% of the property for berms. If we flatten it dramatically, which is what the staff is suggesting, then the net usable square footage on the property, it's just not going to make economic sense for a future development. So that's problematic for us. We do not have a problem making the berms pretty, making them attractive, making them something that displays good landscaping. But we need the height to get that all done, and they need to be steeper than the 1 in 4 pitch that's recommended right now is really quite a flat berm. Doesn't even really look much like a berm. We need it to be the steeper slope that we've spec'd on our application.
So staff recommended 1 and 4. What are you asking? What was on your application?
Just for context, the 4-to-1 slope is what's in our standard specs for all berms. So I don't know if you had a proposed slope on it, Jim, or
I don't have the percentage here, although
Okay.
the submittal, which is on your packet, page 18, is showing the heights of the various, the tannish color you see is the berm under item 2, and you see some numbers at the lower right-hand corner. And when all this stuff gets reduced, it's hard to read, but it says, it's got the number height that increase with it, but it takes a berm from like this to a steeper berm. I don't have the percentage slope with you, I'm sorry.
so who made this slide? I'm getting confused now. 'Cause did we not We didn't make this, did we?
I made that.
Okay. And we wrote something on it?
Yeah, the item numbers are just written on top of what the applicant submitted for this.
Where other than our standard specs are we saying, dictating what the slope has to be?
Just in the standard specs.
Okay,
Yep.
so I think I'm speaking for myself now just as an individual on the commission. For the berm against I-43, I don't much care because it's serving a useful function. It's certainly not the public-facing one in front. I think we're only talking about that one now. I don't think there was anything in items 1 or 2 that expressly described the slope other than our standard specs.
Correct. Yep. So if it was approved, per staff recommendations, they would be subject to that same slope as part of their final berm design. But I mean, we've approved. I think this body's approved steeper slopes on berms.
We've approved them where there's unique mitigating circumstances, like a large freeway next to the property.
Right.
Yeah. I don't think we intend to enforce the 4-to-1 there. I don't think that's implied.
I think if it were stated as a 3-to-1, that would, I mean, I don't know if you need to get that specific.
I don't think we do. It just has to be. Well, we have to push your button too if you want to talk. No one can hear you except us.
I like hearing you. Sorry. A 3-to-1 slope, I'm not advocating as much as just for facts is something that is commonly used where steeper slopes are needed. 4-to-1 is your standard, just like you're saying. Steeper than 3-to-1 can be done, but then you're getting into more complex engineering that I think is outside of what you're. So I guess I'm just saying if it were 3-to-1 just for containing the berms instead, it might fit what people are talking about here.
I don't think there's anything in items 1 or 2 that says
Under number
Exactly
1,
what-
it does say the berm design shall conform to city ordinances. So I think that's where the concern
I think it
is.
should be changed to shall be approved by staff. But I think we expect some sort of deviation there.
Shall be attempt to conform to city ordinances.
It will definitely be steeper than the ordinance. Some portions maybe 2.5, because Jack had also said that in our final design, he wants it to have some degree of undulation, some degree of character. And while we can accomplish some of that with landscaping, some of that also needs to be in terms of a slope. But if it's just too flat, it just does not. In order to achieve this height, we just have way too much space taken up by the berms themselves. The other thing that is not consistent with what we had put, which is really right in the middle of this same page where I put the order of progression, and it's really why we are here tonight as opposed to of coming to you with a complete finished plan and everything all at once, is due to the timing of all of this, we need to be able to give the DOT contractor the ability to start moving fill. If the approvals are conditioned on us submitting more documentation and to create more approvals before we can do anything on the site, we're going to suddenly be into 2024 before we can do anything, and then that would also just preclude the ability to make this whole thing happen. Just wouldn't happen.
Well, yeah, staff's quiet because staff wants the standard specs. But I think there's a case here to be made for at least for the berm along the freeway to deviate from them and maybe deviate from them quite a bit in order to get the intended effect. Let's get a motion on the table and then we can see
You've
how
got
it
a motion.
sounds.
I'd go up to 3-to-1 in spots due to the fact that it's by the freeway.
Well, I wouldn't strictly. You'll get no undulation if you make it 3-to-1. It'll just be 3-to-1. An average of 3-to-1. And you can go above and below it, and you can make it undulate.
We don't need to approve this either.
The
Well, I
motion
think
for item 2, or items 1 and 2.
I think there's a lot of merit to items 1 and 2. So I would like to get to a yes, if we can. Especially since it's not going to get a sound wall any other way.
How about if we amend the motion that the average slope would not exceed 3-to-1?
So we have a motion and a second. Is the motioner and the seconder accept that as a friendly amendment?
Yeah, I mean,
Did we have a seconder?
no, we have a first.
We have a
I'm a
first.
first.
Okay, he's a first. So just add that, and you're all good. And
Yeah.
then someone can second it.
I'm comfortable adding that. So whoever wants a second, chime in.
Motion and a second. Any other discussions or comments? Well, do you want to read back what we heard? It's items 1 and 2 with the dates moved to the end of 24 for the fill and the
June 30th.
June 30th, 25 for the landscaping.
Correct.
And average intended slope of 3 to 1 with some variation allowed, so it undulates.
We could also approve the slopes as part of the final berm design. But
I think they still have to submit the final berm design, but it's gonna probably be, sounds like it's gonna be more of an as-built,
Yeah, my caution is
the way this works.
is
Yeah,
with construction underway, that time becomes of an essence, and relying on something stated is not necessarily the case. There are a lot of people involved, so I think a firm.
I think the way we motioned it and seconded it, it gives them enough of a guideline that we're probably gonna get the result we want. You can submit a rough plan, proposed plan as a guide, and then we just have an as-built check-in just to see it. I don't know. I understand your problem is the guys want to dump truckloads.
The proposed plan is in essence what's up right now, which is your page
Okay.
18 of your packet.
Approximately as presented in the packet.
It's approximate, correct.
Okay.
I just want to say that I totally agree about item 2. I like the berm. I like the sound wall. That's the steepness. It's not an issue. I feel like you could go ahead and I get a little more concerned when we talk about filling an entire property. I've had bad luck in several of my properties with fill on my property and berms behind me. And water is a big issue, and clay soil in Mequon doesn't absorb water. And I just don't want to see any unintended water consequences. So then when we start talking about going faster and faster, and I just want to make sure no steps are skipped, like erosion control plans, things like that, to make sure that if we fill in the property that we're not going to negatively impact the roads or the neighbors.
Well, that's why staff put those conditions on the approval. Yeah, I agree. Yours were built where you lived before we had good standards in Mequon.
I just have to say it for the record to make sure that we don't want to skip anything. I don't have a problem otherwise fast tracking it. In essence.
You are absolutely right. This plan drains from east. This property drains from east to west, and it drains pretty uniformly from east to west, and that drainage would continue. It then gets to the ditch along Port Washington Road. It then, where the little blue pond is in the corner, has a crossroad culvert. It drains under the road to the Ascension property and then works its way west from there. At one point we had some water standing in the corner, but they completely redid their retention ponds in the last year and cleaned it all out, and so then no longer does water stand other than in the flow line of the ditch on a storm event. So I'm comfortable that building the berms as we've shown them will not block or impede water. I'm totally sensitized to water too. I've done so many dozens and dozens of houses, and I understand the clay doesn't perk. I get all of that, but I don't think not even gonna think, we will not have a problem with it on this particular site.
So we have a motion and second on items 1 and 2 as amended. Any further comments or questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So items 1 and 2 pass. Why don't we have a little more debate on item 3? I think staff singled this one out because we've had, the berms are abnormally high for the fronts of properties. There's been some attempts in recent years to reduce the size and scale of berms, and I think there's a little bit of, you can probably describe it better than I, Jack. I think there's some sensitivity where we've tried to enforce other berms, and the staff's very concerned about setting a precedence here.
Yeah, historically, we've kind of gone back in a couple different ways with berms, but our code is based on some of the policies that were made in the mid-2000s where we didn't want anything over 4.5 feet or 6 feet at the max. And we've kind of been trying to stick with that as much as possible. There's been some minor deviations to that, but this thing is 25 feet. I mean, this is the size of some of our two-story buildings that we build along Port Road. And I don't know if we'd even be in a position to ever approve it with a development plan, but absent a development plan, I don't even think we should entertain that at this point. And I don't think this would be a berm where we'd want to deviate anywhere from our standard specs in terms of the design. I know it's Port Washington Road, but you know, Concord Creek is a good example. They have berms along Mequon Road, which is probably the same traffic volume, maybe even higher in that area. Their berms are probably less than 6 feet high. They well landscaped, and it's been now 15, 20 years since those houses have been built back there, and there's an absolute buffer between them and the road. So I don't know if we're ever going to get to a point where we may come to an agreement on the height of this berm other than meeting our requirements, but absent a development plan, I don't think we should even entertain it at this point.
Commissioner Schaefer.
I have such a hard time picturing how tall it will be, and so I'm trying to think of other berms that I know. What about the Highland Road across from MATC? All of those long berms. Those are what, 10?
Yeah, and those
Maybe?
were that was the impetus of changing the ordinance years
Right.
back. I could probably pull those up for you and tell you exactly how high those are.
But they're not anywhere near this.
I don't think they're 25, but we
12?
we have the contours here. We can kind of give you a good idea.
I feel like it came up before. Sorry to drag everyone down in my visualization. It's hard for me to visualize 25-foot tall berms without thinking like it's a building, right?
Our vision for those berms was really based on what we see when we drive south on I-43 through River Hills on the west side of I-43. When I was a kid is when they took the 141 and turned it into I-43, and all the people in River Hills weren't happy because of the new interstate going through, and so they built those large berms. And over time, they have become a hilly-looking area. They're not a berm-looking area. I'm also sensitized to things that don't look attractive when it gets done, and I don't have a problem if we table this particular item tonight. I would like the opportunity to come back, though, at that point with some good-looking designs, and maybe they don't end up 25 feet, but unfortunately, the 4.5, 5 feet, I mean, that's this tall. It's really not a berm, and it really doesn't get you anything in terms of blocking or screening noise or visual pollution, and Port Road is also a negative with respect to this property. So we want this, when it's done, to be an asset to the community, but I would like the opportunity to further discuss berms with the commission and see if we can't find something that everybody agrees is attractive.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're thinking about this in a very smart way. I like that how you described. I don't think any applicant's ever beholden to tell us exactly why they're doing a certain thing, but I always want to know, so I'm glad it was asked, and I appreciate that you were very forthcoming. It sounds like you're being very mindful about the best way to use this property, especially given some of the challenges that you mentioned with the trees and such in recent years. I think what you're describing, River Hills, spot on. That makes sense. Adjacent to 43. And so I think now where we're landing is, okay, I think we all just approved that approach for the similar, adjacent to 43 berm that you're asking for. I think that it's going to be a struggle. Are you able to move forward with the DOT, with everything that you need to, based on the approvals that have already been given tonight?
I'm going to say I hope so. I tried to get the other gentleman here tonight, but he also has to take it back to his senior people, et cetera, et cetera. So I believe so. I hope so. Because again, it benefits all of us to have this piece of land nicer looking than it would be otherwise, without some kind of undulation and without better landscaping.
It does, and I'm DOT ignorant, so I understand if there's timelines that you're trying to adhere to. I don't think that rushing into this part that is that I think we were probably going to vote to table, is my guess, just to try to meet this deadline, which I know is looming for you. Trying to balance the two, but
Right.
I'll wait to see if there's any more questions. But I'm willing to make a move to table this, and then we can talk about what that means and kind of what we're trying to achieve with it.
I do have the berms up there in front of MATC you were talking about, and those are roughly about 10 feet.
And also perhaps something of that scale, but that's not what's on the table in front of us tonight. Commissioner Barnes.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with everything that's been stated here as far as concerns on height, et cetera. And I guess I would strongly urge it would be beneficial to require with the contractor some kind of tentative plan for the berming in what we're talking about in your option 3 area or whatever you want to call it. To bring that, to have that to work out with the contractor and establish and then bringing forward here. My concern is, again, coming from the experience of when construction is underway and contractors have multiple truckloads in operation, things will happen fast. And only by having a tool for, I don't know, enforcement, but basically to activate in the field by the people out in the field to be monitoring and control will be effective. So it's I'm going to call it a preliminary plan or some kind of contract. The contractor could be requested to put it together, where their benefit is they're looking to find convenient spots to dump dirt near the project, and that's their point of view. So it would be, and they're going to show something that probably is bigger than what you want or we want. And yet it can become a basis for enforcement that predates the more final design that we're all talking about.
Commissioner Strelchak, and then I'll propose a way forward, hopefully.
Yeah. I'm comfortable with the additional fill on the property, the berm on 43 as the motion and the vote, showed. I'm very concerned about a 25-foot berm on Port Road. I get that you might need a little taller berm just due to the hospital being there. If this is zoned residential, that zoning, although it does fit the area and it fits the use, it doesn't fit peaceful enjoyment of your home if you've got ambulances going in and out of the hospital. So I would be supportive of some berm a little taller. Just 25 feet on Port Road is in my opinion, it's excessive of what I'd want to approve kind of moving forward here. Again, I like where you're going with this. I like the way that you're improving your property, and I like what your long-term vision is for, putting, making this a nice parcel within Mequon, right? Just, again, expressing openly concern, hearing that somebody's talking about table, that's a non-debatable motion once that happens. I would prefer to see that at the 10 feet or less that would kind of match Port Road, because those feel tall there, although they're well done, right? On Highland Road, right? Yeah.
So we've approved items 1 and 2. I'm sensing some degree of willingness to entertain another berm proposal for the item 3 in front at a later date if we should happen to table it, maybe not to 25 feet, but something a little more muted, but maybe still perhaps above our standard. Everyone's shaking their heads up and down. Okay, so I think we've got direction on that item as well. Someone would need to formally table it, though.
I'll make a motion to table.
I would second that motion.
Motion and a second. That's non-debatable. All those in favor of tabling item 3, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And item 3 is tabled. We'll see you back here at some point for item 3.
I would like to hopefully clarify one last item, and then I know we've taken plenty of time tonight. Other people want to get up here. That and I have no problem, we're going to be using North Shore Engineering to do our grading plan. I have no problem getting that back to staff prior to starting. But just I want to make sure we don't have to come back to the planning commission before we can begin moving any fill. And your write-up kind of implies that, so I just don't want any misunderstandings.
Yep, correct. Yep.
I think we're good to go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Next up, we've got another fill item. Enclave Phase 7. Wow, is it really that high? Applicant is seeking a development agreement and fill permit to allow for 25,000 cubic yards of fill for 12 lots on the parcel located immediately north of 8200 West Donges Bay Road. I assume Cole's going to walk us through this one again.
Yep, this is just DA application for approval as well as the fill. This phase, as shown on the screen and page 25 of the packet, would just be 12 lots between the older phases of Enclave and the 6th phase, and that would eventually connect the Preserve Parkway Street up into that past phase as well. Happy to answer any questions about this one as well.
Are there any questions from the commission? We're all questioned out on fill permits. Okay. If there are no questions, are we sure there's no questions? Going once, going twice? There's one. Commissioner Barnes. Oh, you'd like to make a motion? That's even better.
Push your button.
Yeah, you got to push to talk all the time. Sorry.
Pardon me. I'd like to move that we proceed with staff recommendations for approval of a staff agreement and the items that are contained here.
Motion to
Second.
approve as presented by staff and a second.
Yeah.
Any further comments or questions?
Project's been really great. Thanks again for building a quality neighborhood in our community.
I second that. And someone seconded the motion?
I did.
You did? All right. Excellent. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that's approved.
Was this your
Thank you.
fastest visit ever here? It is. I know.
You just got to get right behind.
You only have to come 7 phases worth, and then you get to. We're gonna
You gotta
rapid
just get
fire.
behind the right agenda item, and everyone up here is softened up. Yeah. Fantastic. That moves us on to our next item. Dennis Bush for Kellaller. Applicant is seeking a certified survey map approval to allow for two-lot division of the property located at 9832 North Range Line Road and the land immediately to the east.
So I have the CS up on the screen for you. So yes, there's 2 lots. There's an existing home on lot 1 as shown right here. There's also 2 outbuildings that are shown on lot 2. Those will be raised as part of this approval process. There's a small existing wetland located back in this area here that shouldn't have any impact on the building of a house on lot 2. In order to get to the 2 acres for this rear lot, the applicant purchased some land from the neighbor to the east. He has about an 8-acre parcel back there. So they purchased about 40 feet there. They also had to dedicate 50 feet to the city in the front for our ultimate road right away. So this has to go to Common Council for approval. Because of the stacked nature of the lots, there's a shared access easement that will be created, and there's also it's not shown on this page, but there's also a sanitary and water easement that'll be run to that rear property. They are asking for a deferral for to connect to city water because it is a little bit further to the north, and Cole can address that issue. Other than that, I know the applicant has prepared a letter. I think has some comments about some of the conditions, and we do recommend approval according to the conditions in the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the commissioners? Maybe we should jump into the letter, I think, then, if there's no questions. Want to walk through that? Do you have a copy of it available? I think I've got a hard copy here, but only a hard copy.
And these were all engineering items, so I can start with this here. Nothing too major here, just kind of responses to our staff report once we posted the packet. The first item, which I kind of detailed in the report as well, just driveway width issue with it being a private shared driveway. It technically has to be 18 feet in width per our specs. This is an existing driveway, and the applicant is requesting a waiver to that item. It also does look like there are some trees pretty close to that existing driveway, so staff wouldn't have an issue with that waiver, given Planning Commission's okay with that. Item number 10 was relating to the utility easements. That was just a more of a comment on if the lateral was to be shared, then they would need a maintenance and easement agreement with that shared lateral, I should say. So it doesn't sound like they're doing that. So 10, item number 10 doesn't need to be addressed. That is only there if that portion was being shared. And then the water connection Jack mentioned, they have a deferral in from connection to the public water, which they technically qualify for from the distance to the nearest main that they could connect to. So that's just more of a thing to be processed at a staff level. Shouldn't be an issue there. And 12 was about the same thing, and they did submit their wetland delineation report already, so item number 13 in our conditions is already met.
Okay, so if I understand that correctly, there's really no impact to item 10 because they're not going to combine the lateral.
Correct.
So there's really no impact. Water looks like they qualify for a deferral at staff level. And item 13 is already addressed, so we're really just down to the driveway width waiver. Why don't we, I think this is a pretty straightforward item with that exception. We want to talk about that. Does anyone have any concerns with that request?
I don't have concerns, but you state that the standard's 18, but you never tell me what the width it actually is that we're accepting. So we're winging it up here, and I don't like doing that.
The existing driveway looked like it was about maybe 14 feet or so. Yeah, I think that's right. Something like that. So it's pretty close. It's concrete, so it'd be a matter of pouring another slab of concrete along the edge for servicing one more property.
That would be a little hard to do and make it look good.
Yeah.
A wide board.
Commissioner Schaefer.
I feel like there's I know my daughter has a friend that this would be kind of side by, or like west and east, right? Is how the two lots would be. And I know there's other houses along there that I think, other properties that I think have done the same thing, where it's a shared driveway. Do we have any sense of, have there been other exceptions made?
Well, I guess historically, years ago, there was a policy that was in place that if it was 4 lots or less, we were okay with a 14-foot
Okay.
driveway with a 1 foot of shoulder on each side. And at one point, engineering department decided to match that with their private driveway requirements for over 4 lots or less. So in the past, they didn't need waivers for most of these because they met that
14.
criteria.
Yeah.
We had a few, I think the Boyd CSM was one that was recent that you guys may remember. She asked for the same waiver because of the narrow driveway.
Oh, yeah.
Hannah Boyd, which never got divided, I don't think, but they did
It's
get
kind of behind
approved
Homestead.
with that same request. And there's been a couple other ones. I mean, when you have 2 drives, 2 shared driveways, it really isn't that much a difference than having a single drive. So, and we may look at that if the commission is open to it. We may look at that, returning that back to their previous requirements, so we don't have to entertain waivers with regard to that anymore.
That may make some sense. Just for a second user, it's a little much. I totally get it when you get to 4 properties or 5 properties, and you start to develop a little bit more traffic and more conflict. But this seems to me like it would be easily managed. So if someone wanted to make a motion with the suggestion of maybe granting the waiver on that item, I'd be willing to entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion per staff recommendations with a waiver on the driveway width to the existing 14-foot and matching that throughout.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other comments or questions from the commission? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? That item is approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, we have Caulfield. Item, the applicant is seeking a certified survey map approval to allow for another two-lot land division for the property located at 12650 North Wasaki Road. Looks like Evan's got this one.
So yeah, there's a applicant is seeking a two-lot land division on Wasaki Road. The current lot is 35.78 acres large, and they're breaking that up into lot 1, which is 29.611 acres, and lot 2, which is about a little bit bigger than 5 acres. Lot 1 contains the only buildings that are on the property right now, and that is just a dwelling and kind of farmstead buildings. The city forester has been on site and determined no specimen trees are going to be impacted. Access to lot 2 is shown via shared access easement through a neighboring lot, which is has the same owner as these two as well. Both lots meet the specific district standards for R1 zoning, but only lot 1 would keep its agricultural overlay since it's the only one that meets the 10-acre minimum for that. Yeah, that's all I had.
And this one has a similar item with the driveway, suggesting the waiver as well. Staff, again, probably wouldn't have an issue with that given it's two lots. Like Mayor was saying, it's probably more applicable when we're serving 3 or 4 lots with the same access point.
That's condition 11 on this one, right?
Correct.
Okay. Any comments or questions from the commission? Commissioner Schaefer.
Evan, can you show on there where the driveway is? I'm sorry if I'm just missing it.
Right down through here.
It's kind of blending in with the setbacks.
It's shared. It's not. It's 3 lots. Like 1, 2, 3. Like this little parcel down here as well.
It would actually just serve lot 1 and lot 2. So this is actually a Washington County jurisdictional street right here.
Got it.
So they're requiring only 1 access for those 2 lots. So that's their requirement, basically.
So I don't see any other questions. Does everyone feel about the driveway width waiver? Do we have there's no driveway there now?
Correct. There's no driveway there now.
Okay, so we'd have to decide what width we want. What's the width of a standard driveway?
Well, the plan there says denotes 20-foot wide access easement. So
That's an easement, but that's
Easement,
that's
but
the
not the
easement.
drive.
Yeah.
How is lot 1 accessed if there's no driveway?
I'd suggest 14 feet with 2-foot shoulders.
Okay.
I would concur.
I guess my question is, can you get a moving truck back there? Because, I mean, a 5-acre lot's probably going residential. I want to make sure we can get a moving truck in and out. It's showing a curve in there. The other one that we approved had an existing 14-foot. I want to be reasonable, but I also want to be structured in what we're doing here moving forward.
And it's kind of hard to tell the scale on here, but from Wasaki Road to lot 2 is probably, I think it's like over 600 feet. So those curves aren't too tight or anything like that. And I think even per our ordinance, residential driveways can go down to 12 feet in width, something like that.
Is it wooded? Is it wooded through that space, or is it open field?
It's just north of a tree line.
Yeah, I heard 14 feet is a reasonable number to shoot for. It'll save considerably on the cost of constructing the driveway to take the extra 4 feet off. I even see the applicants nodding their head up and down, so that's good.
Yeah, 'cause this would be like a 1,500-foot driveway, like long. So.
Yeah.
Get a good snow blower.
Oh, geez, you don't want to do that with a snowblower.
Yeah,
Can I make a motion?
I'm fine with 14 foot with the shoulders. Just a word of caution. Just avoid planting trees too close in. What we don't want to do is have a future discussion where somebody can't get to their property if you'd ever sell it otherwise.
It's all gonna stay farm field. We just didn't want, we did not wanna interrupt the farm field at all, so that's why we're along the tree line, because we do, those farmers do work those fields, so.
Can I
Perfect.
Need a motion?
place a motion?
Every time is appropriate for a motion.
I would like to move that we proceed with the staff recommendation for approval of of this site with as we discussed, the condition for the 14-foot wide
So
driveway
amending,
with shoulders on either side. Yeah.
Second.
motion and a second. Any further comments or questions? Commissioner
I'm sorry, I
Schaefer?
just have one question.
So there's a driveway not on, right now, coming from Woosaki Road directly to the property. Now, Washington County won't allow us to have another driveway, so we have to delete that driveway in order to make this driveway. Now, there's a service road going through the field between basically the lot that's not numbered. Yeah, and then, so basically, it'll be a shared driveway from Woosaki to that service road, and then the service road goes to the
Road
other
is your,
property.
yeah. Thank you for explaining that.
Any other comments or questions? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Happy driveway building. Next up, we have Walter Buildings for Marcus Scucce. Sorry, I just probably butchered that. The applicant is seeking building and site plan approval to allow for a 1,920 square foot storage building for the property located at 6728 West Donges Bay Road.
Yeah, so the building would replace a deteriorating 30 by 60 concept hut in the same location, practically. The building would be used in association with the applicant's classic car restoration and racing business on the property. The applicant received conditional use grant for this back in 1994. The new structure would be comprised of barn red steel paneling along with gray steel paneling on the roof. And not pictured on that that rendering is 6 skylight panels that would be installed on the roof as well. 2 large garage doors on the southern elevation there, along with 2 access doors on the east and west sides. Site compliance visit was conducted on October 17th. There were numerous tires and some debris materials that were piled on the western side of the warehouse on the site, near the garbage bins. Parking areas from the conditional use grant remain open for use right now. There was a recreational vehicle noted on the property and a tractor trailer parked in the driveway. The proposed storage building meets all B5 district requirements. That's all I had.
Anything to add from engineering?
Nothing to add on this one.
All right. Taking it back to the commission here. Any questions? I see one from Commissioner Schaefer.
It says both 30 by 65 by 15, and then it says 40 by 36 by 50.
And then later it says 30 by 64.
So just, I mean,
Which size is it?
It's definitely the
it's all relatively large, but maybe just to confirm.
Which numbers multiply together?
30
with
by
the right square
64.
footage? Yeah.
Pardon? 30 by 64 by 15. Oh, then the existing. Yeah.
Is there a site plan that we can view?
Yeah, right here on the screen up top. So this is I should use this. This is where the concept hut is, where it's collapsing, and where they would be putting that storage building.
What are the other buildings?
The other buildings, there's a concept hut here, another one here, barn here, dwelling here, and kind of a machine shed warehouse right there.
I don't know if that's all the same business, though. I think it is. Well, we should do a site visit, I think.
I think we have to test out.
Yeah.
Maybe,
Commissioner
yeah, we
Barnes.
should test the wares.
Yeah, thanks. as a resident near that area, I think it's good that we have business like yours in the area, and so I encourage you to move ahead accordingly. I will say, I don't hold objections to the recommendations for staff approval here, but I do have one significant item. I don't know if you saw me today, but I went to look at the site. I go by there all the time, and frankly, one of the things, and I mentioned it to some other people, and indeed there is a concern about the presence of the truck and the visibility. Indeed, it's for the uses in that area, but the truck is, in fact, part of it is that when it is parked and in use like you had it today, it is impeding in the city right away. Where I understand for the way you have it operate for loading of the vehicles into the truck itself, but your ramping and so forth actually goes outside into the city right away. And not that we have a whole lot of traffic, but when there is commuter traffic morning and afternoon from the executive park, there's a surprising amount of vehicles through that area. So I have a two-part kind of concern or wonderment maybe you can address for us. Is one, with the conditions that are put in here about, getting the RVs parked out of the way, and with the tractor trailer not be parked except when you're loading and unloading, where would you be putting it other times is the first part of my question.
Yep. I'm actually the contractor, so I'm not
Okay.
100% sure where he's going to put everything. But if you see the two other Quonset huts on there, this is one of three, so they're all falling apart. He's going to take the other two down as well and put buildings on them. We're going to get approval for each, but he's going to eventually store them in there.
So those will be separate items
Yep.
coming forward. I guess, so where I'm coming from right now is the immediate concern of the truck on that drawing today. The back of the truck was sticking out past the right-of-way line, and essentially with the ramp itself
Yep.
right on the edge of our city street pavement. And I know that that's what you have to do to physically move it in, and in the middle of the day, it's probably not an issue, but boy, if you're doing it in the morning or the afternoon, I think it's a significant problem. And so I'm just raising the question in say, without trying to change everything on you, anything, but should the proposed barn be pushed further in, if that's where, just to, in the context of what you got, or is there an alternate position for the truck for where it's going to appear on a weekend and where it's going to be during a weekday with traffic?
One of the things I would say is that he is gone for 6 months out of the year, so it won't be there for a good chunk of it. He actually travels and delivers the Porsches to different races throughout the country, so it's not there all the time. He could put it back further in the property as well. If you can see onto the side of that Quonset hut, it wouldn't be an issue. It's just his machine shed. That's where he unloads his Porsches, and he works on them in that machine shed just offside of the Donjas Bay Road.
I understand, but I guess I'm coming from a public safety consideration of a vehicle fixed in or outside your property in the public right of way and right next to traveling vehicles on Donjas Bay Road.
Another option for us would be to send code enforcement out there as well to kind of resolve that issue rather than dealing with it here.
I'd prefer to, I prefer to find an alternate spot on site they could park it normally.
Yes.
And identify, when we're loading and unloading cars, if it needs to move somewhere temporarily, fine, just don't keep it there.
I would like to see something like number 3 under staff recommendations say something like the tractor trailer may be stored towards the rear of the property or behind the house when not actively in use, loading or unloading. I also tend to think he could keep his RV on the property. This is an industrial area. I kind of think that things can be, cars may be parked outside. That's the nature of the business, and this is kind of the place in town where this could happen. but is with the stipulation that it's maybe to the north of the house or something like that, where it's less visible from the street. I mean, it sounds like the business is going well. You're building a new building. That's great. I think, let's have more Porsches in town.
Just with regard to the RV, that we have a separate code. I think many of you just remembered
I was
passing
just gonna say
the
that.
changes. So unless there's an argument that this RV is somehow related to the business use, I think it should be a separate and distinct issue that has to be addressed through our code for storage of RVs.
That works.
Well, there is a process for that now.
Yeah, we
there's a-
worked on that.
Or
We did
but-
that.
Sounds like the long-term intent is to park it inside anyway, so.
And I do agree with number 6. Storage of materials, I think, could easily go inside the new building.
Commissioner Stralchek.
I'm in agreement with all the staff terms. I'm okay with the semi being parked on the property. Again, addressing Commissioner Barnes, I think adding a condition that except for loading and unloading, between the hours of 10 a.m. and 3 p.m., you know what I mean?
Yep.
That should be positioned in the rear of the property, or just non-peak traffic times is really the goal of what we're looking for here. I've driven by there. I've seen the cars coming in and out, and I think watching the Porsches come in and out, and just with that tractor trailer and the fact that he goes to races, I mean that's kind of a cool. It's a cool business to have right there in the industrial area. I think it just adds a little life to the community and a little bit of excitement. So I'm supportive of that. So if you need a motion that reflects that, I'm happy to
Fire away.
make a motion for approval with the intent. Guys, what do we want to do for hours? Because we want to avoid rush hour, with the tractor trailer. I mean, it shouldn't be parked in the right of way.
I think you want to propose an amendment to condition 3.
Yeah, I'm going to get to condition
You're on
3 then.
page 65.
65. Okay, with an amendment to condition 3 where the tractor trailer may be parked on the property. However, loading and unloading should not be during peak traffic hours in the right of way. And it's just calling out the safety issue that's addressing Commissioner Barnes.
Second.
So just a clarification, was that parked on the property, but with a preference toward it being parked more towards the rear when it's not loading and unloading?
Yes.
Okay. I thought that's what you meant.
Yep. And if, I'm supportive of the RV being removed, but if during buildings 2 and 3 he wants to ask for it and make the case for the fact that it's part of the business, we can talk about that later.
There's a motion and a second. Motion and a second. Any further comments or questions from the commissioners? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? And that's approved as amended.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Next, we have Kathy Burgard for Delish Delivered. The applicant is seeking building and site plan approval to allow for a 2,300 square foot catering services facility for the property located at 6340 West Industrial Drive. And Evan's going to give us a quick overview on this one as well.
So yeah, the applicant is seeking building and site plan approval for the property at 6340 West Industrial for a catering service / food delivery business. This is triggered by the town center district requiring all changing sites require building and site plan approval if not completed in the last 5 years. The use of catering service is permitted in town center already. The business operates as food delivery service for pre-made dinners. The half of the staff is there to cook the food in the morning, and the delivery team loads and transports the meals later in the afternoon. Because the site predates town center, the district creation by quite a bit, there are some disparities with the code. Building is set back more than 50 feet when only 10 is allowed in town center. The building is not offset enough from the east. It's 7 feet right now. And it should be or it shows 11 feet on there, but when I measured it was about 7 feet. And it should be at least 10. The building doesn't have enough parking spaces per code with both this business going in and there's an existing individual office tenant who resides in there. That would require about 35 stalls, and it has about 9. Parking lots are prohibited between principal buildings and street frontage in town center. Streetlights that were kind of installed or implemented along with the streetscaping and design guidelines are not on the site yet, and a lot of the landscaping requirements like street trees and screening the parking lot aren't met either. The architectural styling in town center through the design guidelines. This building doesn't have the existing the materials that are required in there, or kind of the projections that are recommended in the town center design guidelines either. The applicant isn't proposing a lot of change or any changes to the site really at all. Again, the parking lot currently has about 9 spaces. The applicant suggests that it'll be sufficient to handle the cooking team, the delivery team, and the individual office tenant as well. Conversations with staff came to the same conclusion for right now. Just kind of reiterating that street parking isn't allowed on Industrial Drive right now. And applicant isn't really proposing changes to the building's facade or appearance either, but staff is recommending that adding landscaping around the base of the building, awnings above the smaller windows on the building, and replacement of the garage door and access door would be beneficial, as well as installing 2 street lights at the entrance to the driveway to kind of help kind of culminate the town center design into this site as well. That's what I had.
And the only condition that engineering added, actually, could you bring up GIS to show the full parcel lines? There's a really tight corner on the southwest side of the property where West Industrial Drive turns north into Bunch Rock. Oh yeah, you can't really see the orange on here, but basically that corner, the street doesn't really follow the center of the right-of-way there, just due to the geometry of the parcels on the north side. We were doing some, well, as you guys probably know, there were quite a few improvements to the north on Bunch Rock. There's a widened section with paved shoulders, some areas of sidewalk adjacent to the new townhomes that went in, as well as Artesa. So matching that section throughout here, which is the eventual plan, would be very challenging with the right-of-way as it stands now. And then if we went to the property line on here. Yeah. So this area, basically what we would require is a right-of-way dedication 60 feet from this property line on the other side of the street that's not on the screen, but it'd be this triangle here that we would require right-of-way, both for future street improvements and potentially sidewalk and streetscaping. So that was the one condition that engineering added.
Triangle, the dotted line is what you're recommending?
I think there's another one
That's-
over the top of it.
That's the existing one. I unfortunately can't really show you with the GIS, but it'd be approximately here. Yeah, it would match the geometry on the other side.
It just doesn't show up very well on there. I just tried to see if I, you can kind of see it on.
You can kind of see it in the GIS.
Yeah, and you can see there's kind of an orange line across the street that goes across that white concrete driveway, right on the corner there. Right here. So it'd be 60 feet from there would be the line that we would require that to.
Question?
Okay, that's it for the staff report. We'll take some questions now, and then we'll get to the applicant in a second here. Commissioner Barnes.
Yeah, following up on what you're just talking about, I don't really have much in the way of objections on what's being proposed by staff, but I still seeing the trees that are along the right-of-way line, and that's where I was getting concerned about with the alignment of the road and so forth. I guess my hope would be that the trees be preserved, and then I see that they would be going into the right-of-way. They're currently on the private property, but be going into the, and I realize this is some other work, but in terms of matching it in with what's required here, and then how that relates to the requirements that you're bringing up here about adding some planting, some shrubbery, what have you. Can that be made to fit if the street alignment was adjusted a bit like you're talking about?
Potentially, we have not even started looking at this for improvements. It could be 5 or more years down the line, but eventually the goal is to match that section from the north down and match it into industrial to the east, because, well, with the school right there too, providing either a sidewalk or at least a paved shoulder would be really beneficial. So that was kind of the goal of that, but we would try to preserve trees if possible.
I think that right-of-way dedication grabs you one tree is all. Just the one on the very corner. And I drove through there intentionally on the way to this meeting. The trees look fantastic, so yes, they should be preserved. Any other questions? To the right, Commissioner Schaefer?
I just want to hear whether the applicant has concerns, because it's really kind of putting a lot of ask on the applicant.
I'm sure we're getting there, yes. Commissioner Barnes?
I did have one other, in that I know that oftentimes there are issues with particularly elementary schools and traffic from the schools and so forth. And are there any concerns that we need to be made aware of as far as with what is a different use or more activity at this place with respect to parental traffic that always seems to be big? And I don't know if that's an issue or a concern or not.
There is definitely a good amount of peak traffic in the morning for school drop-off. A lot of parents park on the side of the street, which they really shouldn't be doing, but it does happen. I don't think that this generated enough traffic, at least during peak, to be of concern for that. But
and nor would it be a concern as far as the proposed changes that you're suggesting, or with the vegetation that you're suggesting in parental parking activity or whatever.
I don't think any of that was suggested to go on the right of way. I think it's just screening the parking lot. Yeah. Any other comments from the commissioners? The applicant, I'm sure you may have a comment or two. Just push the.
I do have a couple comments.
You have to push the. You may have to hold the button. If it's green, it's on. You may have to hold it.
Is it on now? Yeah. Okay. I'm Kathy Burkhart. I have a fun little dinner delivery business, and I'm just looking to hopefully purchase this property to move my commercial kitchen into the warehouse portion of it and operate my business there. So I'm not looking to do any new development or any improvements or changes to the building or the site just yet. I do understand that. I mean, the property was originally developed before there was a TZ zone. So yes, there are a number of things that are not compliant right now, and so I understand that. But that's because the regulations didn't exist at the time it was built. So I do want it to look nice, of course, but it kind of seems to me like maybe the time for some of these adjustments to be enforced, and it would be when there's additional development or more changes being proposed for the site, which could be in the near future, but not right now at this time. With regards to the landscaping, I think it would look nice, as you mentioned, to screen the parking area with, I'm suggesting like 4 shrubs for that. And then also on the east side of the building, for the landscaping, 3 shrubs or something like that to conceal the equipment that's on the east side. And then as far as the awnings that were recommended, I would be perfectly fine with putting 2 awnings on the smaller windows on the west side of the building, which faces the Wilson School, and as you see there. And let's see, as far as the garage door, I'm wondering if it would be acceptable to just paint that black and the garage entry door as well, rather than completely replace them at this time. That I believe would look quite nice. And then as far as the street lights, I don't know. To me, it just kind of seems like the purchase of the poles and the lamps and the monthly energy expense to light up the street shouldn't necessarily be the responsibility of me. But I don't know. The neighboring properties don't have street lights, so I was just kind of wanted to chat about that one. And as far as the right-of-way, I just, I have an offer in to purchase the property from the seller. Just hitting me kind of strangely to have to immediately then donate a piece of what I just bought to the city. So I just wanted to talk about that a little bit too. Let's see, I do have an excellent architect now, Peter Ogoric, who was not involved with any of the submissions to this point because of the urgency and the deadlines. I was able to put those together without him. So, but he would be involved in the going forward. So I just wanted to mention that. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions from the commissioners for this applicant? Commissioner Strelchak.
Yeah, I've just got a couple questions to address the applicant's concerns. I mean, what I'm hearing is the applicant wants to purchase a building, use the building as it exists today in its existing form for a business that's allowable within town center. And in exchange for that, which is basically all they're asking for is an occupancy permit and permission to move forward and operate their business in the space. We're putting all of these extra requirements on them. I understand a little bit of the landscaping and screening. I agree with the applicant from the standpoint of the the light poles. If that's a town center zoning requirement, with development that developments have purchased and put them in. But again, she's using an existing building as it stands today. And as a city, why do we get to dictate that we take that right away from day one? So I guess I have kind of a bold question, a couple questions for you guys that I'm just looking for real straightforward answers to understand.
Sure. So for the town center portion of your question, those buildings go through, if there's any kind of change to occupancy or anything for those buildings in town center that haven't gone through them in the past 5 years, the thinking is to have them go through building and site plan approval to make them more kind of in concert with what's part of town center, what the design guidelines are, and get them more compliant get them as compliant as possible with the spirit and the kind of district of town center to kind of make it a more cohesive neighborhood and community. So that's why a lot of these standards are being applied to this building in particular right now, whereas some of the neighbors or those kind of on the fringes of town center aren't really being held to the standard at right this second because there's no change in occupancy or change in any additions or anything going on with them right now.
I also just wanted to add that I'm sure the aldermen and the mayor know, but the rest of the commissioners may not know that we were out of money in our TIF district spending, and we passed an ordinance recently that says that the onus for any other public improvements falls upon the owners and the developers when the properties are developed. And we understand in this case this is an existing building. She's not doing a ton to it, so we didn't. If it was a new development, we would probably require full sidewalks around the whole length of that property, full lighting, everything to be updated. So since it's not, and we're cognizant of the fact that this is a costly endeavor, we try to pick and choose the highlighted things that we think would have the most impact. As you may know, that the lighting actually comes on. If you can put the ortho back up, please. Further, zoom out a little further than that. So right now, this is the row houses, so the lighting actually comes about to this point here, and then on the other side it comes to this point here. So our intent would be eventually to have the lighting throughout this area here. Now, some of these are vacant, some have been purchased by other developers, so eventually maybe this some of those will fill in, but if we do not require anything in here, we're going to have a gap, and that could sit there for 10, 20 years. So we're just trying to at least walk that fine line between, not overly burdening the applicant, but trying to get as much of the town center standards in place as possible. So if time is an issue, we can always look at extending the time frame to get those amenities in, but we really would like to see at least some of those amenities put in as part of this change of use.
And then the right-of-way question?
What about the right?
That's an engineering issue. I'm not sure.
It's kind of along the same lines. I mean, like I was saying with that corner, we're going to have great difficulty doing anything like we have elsewhere in town center with our street section or streetscaping, lighting, all that stuff around that corner. This seemed like a prudent time to try to fix that, but if it's not, then we don't have to require it, but it's one of those times that something's actually occurring here. So
It comes up frequently. It's almost like it's kind of correcting a mistake that was made in the map, 50 years ago or whenever the road was first put in. It's the right-of-way center line doesn't go where the road was actually built, so it's kind of, I'm sure it was easier to draw on a map 50 years ago, but it's not very functional today. I think that's what's up with that item.
I think the benefit of having the right-of-way is the option that if the city does choose to put in a sidewalk at some time, that they would have the benefit of that access to the sidewalk and things like that. I guess it just seems like hey, you want to move in, oh, by the way, we'd like a corner of your property, and then here's a few extra things that you want to do, and the applicant just simply wants to move in the building and operate their business, with it as close to as we can get. So I guess what leeway is there to compromise? I mean, can we give them the light poles in exchange for right of way, or I guess I'm going to ask the applicant, what are you comfortable with? I know that you've got objections to a couple of these items.
I think it was primarily the street lights. I mean,
Are you asking if I would, which I would choose if I had a choice between the streetlight requirement or the right of way?
Would you be open to that, I guess, if the city put in the streetlights at our expense, Jack?
We don't have the funding left anymore from our TIF district to do that.
I'd like to ask one question. I'd like to ask a series of questions, actually, all on the same topic, though. I think most of the streetlights that were put in when the TIF was able to fund incentives, which the time closed back this last April, those were provided by the TIF, weren't they? I don't think even
not in every case. It's a mixture. So like MTC 1, the town center 1.
Okay.
They paid for it all, but then we gave an incentive.
Correct. Okay.
Then we put the stuff in now as part of this current project on Mequon Road. We're putting in a lot of lights there. Foxtown did the same. They put their own lights in, they paid for it, but then they got an incentive. Bob Bach put his, the row houses, he put those lights in, and then he got an incentive as well. So we've kind of done it differently for different projects. But we recently just paid for all the improvements on Mequon Road, which includes, I think, 18 pedestrian lights as well.
Correct, and we currently have not expended all of our reserve funds that were budgeted. Does that allow us to buy a few extra?
We did purchase additional lights, but we have them allocated for other locations. I'm not sure. You'll get an update at the I think the November meeting with regard to where we are with the budget and where we're at with contingencies. And if the council decides to do that, I guess we can look at that.
Well, I was thinking about this over the weekend. We have a lot of unused contingency for our public project, which is already budgeted and at least in theory committed. And that might afford us the ability to buy a few extra light fixtures to be able to donate in instances like this. Because I think when we think about redeveloping a site, we think of someone coming in and raising it and putting something in bigger or doing a significant expansion. This is, someone just wants to move in and use it. So I can see where, I mean, these are, for everyone who wants to know, these are about $5,000 a piece. And that's the purchase cost, not the installed cost, so there's additional cost to install it. I don't think they cost very much to operate, though. They're all LEDs.
No, they're all LEDs, so that's the relatively cheap part of it, so.
Since there are not yet lights around that whole bottom of that segment, would we be able to extend the deadline for installing lights out 7 years or something like that?
That's an option. It's hard to track on our end of it because, 7 years, whoever's here might not know that's a rule that they have to follow up on. We typically don't go out that far. But I think you're going to probably see some development occur, but it's going to be further to the north. I think we've already got some proposal for where the Central Park dog daycare is for doing some work there. It's not a full tear down rebuild, but there is some proposal coming forward, I think, in the near future on that one. And then I know that the Foxtown Group has purchased a couple of the vacant lots, so they may have something in mind for some of those too. But you're right, there will be a long period of gap. And that's why I don't think we were requesting for her to put in the whole stretch of lights. We were just looking at maybe just one or two at the entranceway to kind of mark the location of the driveway, and then we work backwards from that to get the spacing to match whatever happens in the future.
To me, I
The way you
think
could do it is defer it till there's a building expansion or the development to the north connects the two. At such time, then
then you have to review.
then you'd have to jump in and continue
Right.
it. Yeah.
One of the benefits of this site, I'm not sure if the applicant knows it or not, but that actually is divisible, and the northern piece of that could be sold off because of the town center requirements for land. She's got enough acreage where that, you can see on the screen that this vacant piece here actually could be split off and sold and redeveloped. Now, if that would be the case, we would definitely require additional work to be done along that stretch for that development. But then again, her development will sit kind of idle and not match. So it's just the joys of redevelopment and trying to predict the future and have a crystal ball. It's tough to do sometimes.
To me, the more important thing is the right of way. I could bypass everything else, just that dedication of the right of way, and for when a sidewalk does come through, especially since there's a school right there, I want people to be able to walk home to the new Foxtown developments, to walk to that bakery that's over on the other side of Weston. I would love to see a sidewalk there, so to me that's the most important part. And everything else is separate, but I would love to see you stay here. I'm excited to have you stay in Mequon, so fingers crossed.
Any further questions from the commission or a motion, perhaps? Commissioner Chorin.
I mean, the reality is that in order for this property or the building to match the town center, you'd have to knock the darn thing down.
That's exactly right.
So I think we have to make some leeway. I mean, that's obviously not an option for you. And some of the other items that you brought up but haven't been talked about is the painting the doors and allowing the awnings on the west elevation. I don't recall what the city says with regards to those things, or their response to those two things.
For the awnings, it was just having them on the, let's see if I can pull up these smaller windows were like here, and kind of this on the west elevation on, let's see if I can pull up this is there's not on that side. But on the east elevation here, it's kind of boxy and almost looks a little too industrial. So having them kind of along these windows as well would kind of break that up and make it a little more closer to what the town center design specifications are.
For the applicant, have you purchased the property yet?
I have an accepted offer and with contingency of Mequon's approval.
I guess I'm wondering whether some of this could be picked up by the seller.
The seller?
So, good evening, everybody. My name is Peter Ogorek. I'm an architect with Perspective Design. If you can bring up the site plan again, the east side of the building, and then if you can go to the aerial photo, the east side of the building faces towards a metal building that has loading docks that face towards the east side of Kathy's building. So we would be putting awnings on the east side of the building that probably, before the town center ever expands this far, this building, as the commissioner said before, would likely be demolished. So we would be putting awnings on the east side of a building to face a loading dock of a metal building that also will probably be gone if and when that development ever extends this far. So it seems to me that we're spending the applicant's money for no appreciable benefit. The west side of the building is the side that Kathy has agreed that she would put the awnings on. That's the side that faces towards the school, faces towards the right-of-way, and she's agreed that that would be a reasonable place to put those awnings on for the short term. And so, as the commissioner pointed out before this site ever has the landscaping standards that would be met, the lighting standards that would be met, this entire site would be redeveloped in order for that to happen. And again, I think it's a burden being placed upon somebody trying to operate a building in an industrial park that someday wants to be a town center. That day may be 10 years from now, 15 years from now, may never happen, who knows? And that the appropriate time to place those requirements on this site is when this site would redevelop, as opposed to when somebody's trying to reoccupy. So, that's my suggestion is to tie this stuff to redevelopment of the site as opposed to reoccupancy of a building that already exists. That's probably going to be inappropriate if and when the town center ever does get this far down onto Industrial Drive.
I would just say the town center is here. It is zoned town center, and a lot of the uses in this area are taking advantage of the new town center zoning, even though they're older buildings. So this is the town center, and may not look like it everywhere, but these uses are approved and permitted in the town center. And we don't expect everything to develop in this monochromatic kind of apartment look either. We're going to expect different types of buildings, different types of architecture. But I just want to make sure we understand that this is part of the town center, and just because it doesn't look like everything is new like it does along Mequon Road, we are seeing growth and development of uses in this area that are only permitted in the town center. Like just to the north, there's the golf simulator building right here. Now, they were approved years ago. That under the industrial zoning, they would have never been allowed to go there. So and we did make them do some improvements at the time as well. Unfortunately, we didn't make them do some of the stuff that we're asking this applicant to do because we had TIF funding available, and we thought we were actually going to do a lot of that at the time, but we spent the money on other things. So and that's why we're in the situation now. We have to decide whether we incrementally make these improvements or we somehow look at different funding sources in the future to make these improvements. And absent the TIF funding, I think we have to look at each individual site and try to at least thread the needle on something that we want to see done without overly burdening the applicant in terms of cost.
Commissioner Chorin.
Now, looking at the recommendations, the landscaping for the parking lot and the building, it's vague. I mean, how does she have any sense of what you need or what the expense she may incur, and what are the conditions of the garage door and the entry doors that are they in such poor condition that it means they should be replaced, or can her option of painting them be considered?
For the landscaping, much of that was based around the both the zoning code itself and the town center designs guidelines document, and that's just having, especially on this parking lot, it's very kind of open to the street, and again, it's prohibited to have parking lots between the principal building and the street frontage in the district. So screening that with ornamental trees or mid-height shrubs or some sort of bushes, or just something that's a little more attractive and screens the parking lot a little bit better than kind of just having these street trees around the periphery of the site. And Just kind of breaks up that. That's not good.
Where did it go?
No, it's done. All right, we're gonna go verbal. So yeah, just having the street trees not be the primary source of screening for both the parking lot and the building itself, and kind of around the perimeter of the building as well. Have again bushes, mid-level mid-height shrubs, kind of smaller trees, just to help break up kind of like the boxiness, the concrete exterior. Just to help kind of break that up and make it a little bit more inviting, or just not have it be one solid concrete block is really kind of the thinking there. What was the second part of your question? I can't remember. Yeah, the garage door, it's not incredibly damaged, but it is quite dated. Okay. And so is the access door that is adjacent to it. Staff kind of milled around having it either be kind of a black replacement or glass. That would kind of look a lot better and more attractive than the existing garage door. Yeah.
Oh, there's one on page 94.
The front of the building, which faces south, is pretty cute, just so you know. It doesn't look like that all the way around. The front is, pretty nice, especially compared to the properties on right near it.
Back at page 94.
So Evan, if you could go one more picture down. That's the neighbor,
Yeah.
that we're talking about, trying to put glass doors and black doors and landscaping and awnings. Again, my suggestion would be that we tie it to future development of this site, as opposed to trying to apply standards that were never meant for a building of this type.
Well, I think painting it would spruce it up a little bit. I mean, if it's still functional, it doesn't have a big dent in it. I think painting it would probably be sufficient to spruce it up. That's kind of a tough sell. We've got nothing in the standard regs on that. That's not even a town center design condition. I don't believe. Well, we need to formulate a motion out of here, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm going to try a motion. Approval, accepting or recommending the landscaping that staff is requiring in item number 1. Installing awnings on the west face. Painting the garage door and entrance door. Delaying the dedication of the right-of-way. And delaying the street lighting. There probably needs to be some time frame on that, but I'm open to suggestions.
Well, let's set the right of way aside for a second. How about for the street lights, deferring purchase and installation of the street lights until the land is divided, the building is expanded, or the properties to the north create connectivity and lighting to their lot to the south. North or east? Well, they're both north. They're at the very southern end. Each way you go, it's north.
There's an east.
Yeah. Well, okay. I'll take your word for it.
I'd find that acceptable.
Second.
Oh, well, you can't second a motion without part of it. So should we
Could I-
maybe talk about the right of way? I think there's some, Commissioner Bonnie brought up some good reasons why we might want the right of way, and it's actually a pretty small sliver of that corner. It's just that little triangle on the southwest corner of the lot.
I mean, if you look at the site plan with that triangle as you described, it doesn't affect the parking. It doesn't appear to affect the driveway. It's just the fact that you're losing some square footage of land that you just bought. And a tree, so, okay, yeah.
The
so-
tree will stay there. We won't do anything with it.
So I change the motion for the dedication of the right-of-way, but then accept
The way I articulated the,
where you articulated the street lighting. I'm saying include the recommendation for the dedication of the right-of-way as as staff has stated.
Second.
I think that aligns with the motion Commissioner Barnes intended to second.
So is it appropriate after the second to add more comment, or?
We can continue to have debate. We haven't voted on anything.
Okay, cool, thank you. So, it's interesting to me that, part of the commentary that staff made is that the city doesn't have the money to put in the lights, but apparently the applicant does. Is the city in a position to buy that right-of-way from the applicant as opposed to her gifting it? She's about to put down good money to buy that property. Is that something that the city could buy from her at, let's just say the same rate that she just paid to acquire it?
Well, there's no offer on the table, and it's actually the wrong body to entertain such an offer anyway.
But could that be part of the condition that the city would, and then you guys can take it up at budget
after
time or whatever, so.
I think you either need to leave the condition in or just take it out completely, and if the city needs the right of way in the future, they'll take it via eminent domain, and they'll have to compensate her based on rates at the time. So, but I would not negotiate any sort of purchase of it as part of this approval.
I don't even think we can.
Yeah, I
That'd
don't-
be
yeah,
the
I don't
common
think that
council's job, yeah.
So it goes back to what I originally said, is that remove that stipulation for the right-of-way out of the motion.
Yeah, it's up to you. It's either you leave it in or you take it out. I think it's one of the, but there's no in between that.
I mean, I'm thinking take it out so that there can be discussion later to potentially discuss some sort of a financial solution between the owner and the city.
Maybe they'll trade us the land for a couple of streetlights. But I don't know. There's been no offer made. Well, we have a motion and a second that does not include the removal of the right-of-way item. Is there, someone could always make an amendment to the motion on the table? The motion and second does not include the removal of that condition at this point.
So my amendment would be to remove item number 4, which is the dedication of the right-of-way.
I'll second that revised movement or motion.
Well,
Well, those are the motioners and seconders of the last motion, so I think they can accept that as a friendly amendment to their original motion and original second.
So
Thank you.
just to clarify, we keep number 1, we extend number 2, we modify number 3, remove number 4.
Correct.
So yeah,
You should probably remove 5 as well. Those are kind of paired.
Right, and 5 kind of goes with 4.
yeah, it could have been wrapped up in one. Correct.
So then, are you gonna talk about the right-of-way? Okay.
Correct. Correct.
So just one other comment that I would like to make about, I don't know which item it is, number 2 or number 3, as it relates to the landscape standards. As you, I'm sure, know from having gone through many projects that have been built in the town center, the landscape standards are very, what's the right word, strict and, substantial. So, I think the way that it's been presented here by staff is that the intent is to make the landscape match the ordinance requirement. That would be a substantial burden on this piece of property. So, being the guy who's going to have to try to figure out what all this means after we're done,
Well,
looking for some clarification on exactly what that landscape requirement will be from this committee. So I know what
I
to
don't think
present.
it includes all
It's-
the street trees.
It's not landscaping per the town center ordinance, it's landscaping per our landscaping ordinance. So even if this was still in zone industrial, we would still require the same landscaping to be installed and put in per our landscaping plan. And there are existing street trees, so you don't have to worry about street trees, but the parking lot screening requirement is regardless of what zoning district it's in or what type of use it is in. So I don't think the landscaping requirement is anything overly burdensome because it's in the town center. It's something we would require no matter what.
That really does go across district lines.
Yes.
Yeah. So
And
it's not the
just
town
so-
centers.
So the intent is that the screening of the parking lot would meet the
Standard.
the city standard.
Standard landscaping guidelines, not necessarily the town center ones.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any further comments or questions from the commissioners? Hearing and seeing none, let's call the roll on this one. Let's So, correct. So it's item 1 as presented with the clarification. It's the standard landscaping specifications. Condition 2, the lighting, the request for the lights deferred until the building is expanded, the land is divided, or the properties to the east or the north create connectivity with the lighting around that bunt rock loop, as we'll loosely refer to it. No dedication of the right-of-way, and therefore no common council approval. And then awnings only on the west facade, not the east facing the loading dock of the other business. And that included not replacement of the garage doors and the entry doors, but painting of them to make them look better.
I think I just have one more comment. Quite honestly, I think the right-of-way is still more important to me than even the landscaping, and I think is less of a cost burden to the applicant.
Then you might not vote for it.
Correct.
All right. With the clarification of the motion and second on the table, let's call roll.
Okay, thank you for clarifying, Mayor. Okay. Commissioner Barnes.
Aye.
Commissioner Chorin.
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer. Commissioner Hawley.
Aye.
Commissioner Urbani.
No.
Alderman Strelchek.
Aye.
Mayor Nurbin.
Aye.
Vote passes 5-2.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next up, we have Lemberg Electric for BMO Bank. The applicant is seeking a sign design approval for a drive-through vinyl signage on the property located at 1425 West Mequon Road. It looks like Evan's up again.
Yep. Oh, we should probably scroll down, huh? Okay. So yeah, applicant is seeking a sign approval for drive-through signage at 1425 West Mequon Road. This is the BMO Harris, but now BMO. Initially, it was part of a sign package for BMO's rebranding. It was first a drive-through decal on the bottom of the 3 drive-through windows, and that exceeded the 2 square foot maximum. So after denying that, BMO reapproached staff with a redesign, removing the vinyl strip, which brought it under the 2 square foot maximum for those vinyl stickers right there you see. Staff denied the permit based on design due to the size of the signage and the legibility from all of the drive-through lanes, not just the adjacent one. Existing signage, while it is non-conforming, it's pretty large. It's white lettering on the inside of the drive-through window. So yeah, while non-conforming, it's preferable because it can be legible from all 3 drive-through lanes, and read fairly easily. And removal of Harris Bank from that existing decal was acceptable to fit the rebranding for BMO.
All right. Any questions from the commission after that brief update? Commissioner Chorn.
Clarify for me, what are they placing on the window? It seems from what I've seen, it's hours.
Yeah, it's this BMO logo, and then this.
I think that's it. I think
This is their hours statement. This is updates.
It's at least packet page 100 in my packet. It might be a few off in others who download the packet early. The 106 on it's either in 106 or the 100 in the revised packet that was sent out
But
or
it's
posted
got,
later.
It's got the BMO logo, the hours, the FDIC sticker, and what's the one you got the cursor on?
This is like notices, so Thanksgiving hours, Christmas hours, holiday hours.
Number one, I'm dumbfounded why we're looking at signage at a drive-through on the side of a building underneath a canopy, and not facing the street, and the fact that I don't think anybody in any of the lanes probably pays any attention to that anyway.
It feels like we're caught between it's kind of a catch-22 here. In order for it to be small enough, or small enough in square footage, it's inherently going to be illegible for many of the lanes. I'm not exactly sure what this is hurting. I agree no one will be able to read it. I'm not sure it's hurting anything at the same time either.
The people that want to read it will pull up and find it's closed, back up, pull into the first lane to find out the hours. That's what I have done. Move to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yeah.
Commissioner Schaefer.
I just wanted to get staff's thoughts because it doesn't meet our code, but also.
Yeah, we just thought it was like.
Do you feel like it's egregiously?
Let me pull up what's existing.
I don't know. You'll
I mean,
never
it's not
see
really.
it.
It's small. I don't know. It's like.
It's the BMO logo is 2 3/4 inches tall. Well, yeah.
I'm just thinking about the denial versus voting to approve when it just says denial.
That is really not the best image. I don't know if you can barely make out. Oh yeah, if I got my cursor over it, you can kind of make out where the existing vinyl signage is. So yeah, that's just a much larger version of the same thing and same information. It can be read across all 3 lanes fairly easily. That's what's existing, and it's non-conforming at this point because it's more than the 2 square foot minimum. So. Yeah. Correct. Correct.
So staff wants it larger, right?
Yeah, to keep the existing. Yeah.
So the existing's cut vinyl lettering with hours on it, correct?
Correct.
Not these little insert cards?
Correct.
That, quite frankly, once they're on the other side of tinted glass with any type of glare, you're just simply not going to. I worked in graphics for 20 years. This isn't going to work. I'm supportive of staff's position on this, just for the record, team. I'm not worried about the size. In my opinion, the logo could even be a little bit bigger. I don't know that you need your logo on every window. I think people know based on the sign outside which building they're pulling up to. But I'm supportive of staff's position and will vote accordingly tonight. But again, I agree with Commissioner Choren's statement that this is so small it really just doesn't matter, honestly.
guess I have to confess I'm confused. Are you suggesting that the existing BMO Harris, take the Harris off and leave what they have there?
Yeah, correct. Just to leave the BMO with the logo.
And that's what you're recommending?
Yeah, that was what was included as a condition of when they initially applied for a sign package to fit all their rebranding. That was the condition in the sign permit that they could.
What's with regards to the hours and the FDIC and all that?
That could all remain.
Okay, if that's what you've clearly.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, once we're done commenting on this, maybe we should ask the applicant for their thoughts.
I was going there next.
Is everyone done taking their crack at this one? If so, let's let the applicant have a couple minutes.
I think now it's on. I work at Lemberg Electric, so we've been doing BMOs, rebranding. They're just getting rid of Harris Bank. For this particular location, part of the rebranding too is actually the colored logo that they want to have on there. And what they have on there right now for vinyl isn't removable, so what they do for posting hours is taping up a piece of paper in the window. So they want to have those inserts in there so that they have something that is more presentable, that also has their, logo and colors on it, but interchangeable when those hours change.
Yeah, I think that's the challenge, is a permanent decal isn't changeable. I don't know, it's so small, I don't know if anyone will be able to read it, and if you pull up right next to it.
I don't know any business in Mequon that if they've got holiday hours for Thanksgiving, don't stick something in their window and just kind of show that they're going to have abbreviated hours for Thanksgiving. Are these mounted inside or outside of the building?
Those are mounted inside of the building.
Which you won't be able to see from any more than the first lane, maybe the second at best.
That could be very true, yes.
I'm still supportive of staff's position on this.
Any further comments or questions? Thank you. It's good to get the other side of this story. We have a motion and a second to approve as presented. Why don't we just call the roll and we'll see where, unless there's any other comments or questions. Okay. So you're approving. If you vote aye, you're denying it, voting no. So
Ready?
Call the roll and
Okay.
we'll see where she lands.
Okay. Commissioner Urbani. Commissioner Barnes.
Aye.
Commissioner Hawley.
Aye.
Commissioner Joran.
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer. Alderman Strelchuk.
No.
Mayor Nurbin.
It almost doesn't matter which way I vote, so I'll vote no. It still gets 4 votes.
We're supportive of the business regardless.
So vote passes 4-3.
And then, so just to confirm, it's approved for.
Approved as.
Okay. All right. Thank you for the clarification.
All right.
It's so small.
Thank you.
And then it leaves us with our last item, which no one probably saw in their packet. You have it. No, you have the oldest one. You have the original one sent out early before the amendments took off. The one that's online right now does not have anything on this item.
I drove by it.
But we're going to go through it anyway, because Jack has assured me we can slog through it. It's not that hard to comprehend.
Yes, I apologize.
It's a
I don't
simple
apologize.
sign waiver.
Not sure how it got hacked out of the packet, but
So if you downloaded it early,
I did. I downloaded it today.
oh, maybe you have it today. I did it
Was
yesterday.
it
I
properly
think.
noticed?
I'm not sure what
It's
happened.
properly
there.
noticed. It's on the agenda.
Yeah, it's just the electronics didn't get in the packet for some reason.
It's in one packet. It's not in another.
We're winging it.
So I guess I'll start with,
Always table
so
if you
this
don't
is
like
the property on Mequon Road, and as you can see, it's maybe a little bit hard to see, but this is their existing sign right here. And they're requesting a new sign to be located, basically, we'll get to that one. So this is how it looks from the other side. currently, and they're looking for a sign to be placed basically in this location here. So I do have some drawings of that. And originally they started off with the stone. They do have a brick alternative now, which is supportive. So this is where the sign would go, and there's a couple other pages to kind of show it. Staff was not supportive of this version. This would require two waivers. One, the waiver to the height, which Town Center has a 6-foot height requirement. This is 7 foot to the top. So we wouldn't be supportive of that. We've been pretty steadfast on that 6-foot requirement. The other requirement, the waiver would be needed is for the setback. This is about 2 feet from the right-of-way line. The reserve sign, as you see in the background there, that's context, that's about 5 feet from the right-of-way line. We did one of the recommendations. We tried to work with them a little bit. One of the recommendations we did come up with was making this base match the brick base here, which they were supportive of. But the other suggestion staff had, and I can go back to my other picture here, not this one, the other one. So our suggestion was this wall here was built to meet the town center standard to create, because you have to have at least 70% of the building frontage has to be within 10 feet of the street. So they put this wall on as a decorative feature. We didn't really, I guess, didn't feel it was finished very well. So we thought maybe we'd come off this wall with the sign and go this way, and then have it basically the same direction as a proposal, but a little bit further away from the two transformers and the reserve sign, and then keep it at least 5 feet from that property line. They didn't want to entertain that option. They felt the issue is that when people are driving eastbound on this road, they pass the driveway when they see the sign, and then they have to turn around to go back into the driveway. Now that situation is going to exist probably no matter where you put the sign, because if you're going at 45 miles an hour, I don't think you're going to see those signs anyway. But we just felt that architecturally it would look nicer if this sign was kind of integrated with this wall and come off the sidewalk a little bit, and then not meet the 2-foot setback off the front. So we'll recommend denial of the sign waiver, and I can I'll pull up the actual brick version of it for you as well.
Does it come with a free bug? The one that's on the screen?
Oh, jeez. Box elder bug again?
Yeah.
Thing's giant.
Laser pointer on him for a couple extra minutes.
Oh, wait. Which one was that? I just downloaded it. Show up. Oh, this is the other one.
So where's the sign for it now?
It's
way to
hard
the
to
west.
see. I'll pull it up again.
Yeah.
For some reason, that didn't pull up. Here, you can see it on here. It's in the shadow, but if you look closely, you can see the sign. Here's the base, and here's the top of it. It's right near the entranceway as you come in along Mequon Road.
So if you're traveling east on Mequon Road, you still got to turn around after seeing the sign. Why don't they just put the sign where the old one was?
Well, no, if you're traveling east, there's no driveway once you pass that sign to get in. So that's their argument. So if you're looking at it from
I think the only
No,
way to
it's-
fix this issue would be to move the reserve sign to the other side of the driveway and have Story Point on the east side of the driveway, and I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Correct. And the reserve sign actually,
That's why they're asking for the setback waiver, because they can push it closer to the street and a little higher. It's
the
kind
reserve
of
sign actually confuses me. I always think that that's the reserve.
the guy here.
I mean,
Put it in the median.
we could have some
the
blue
DOT would
signage
say
along
otherwise.
the road.
oh, the guy that's the applicant. So here I got the view of the. So this is the entranceway. The current sign is located about here. So if you're traveling eastbound, you'll pass the sign. You're going to have to turn around and come back around and go around. The proposed sign is basically at this location here, which will still have the same impact unless you're able to see it past the reserve sign and the transformers.
I actually sort of like Jack's suggestion to build it off that wall and have it come out in, maybe if you're willing to entertain that, we could maybe you could talk about maybe a little bit of a setback waiver to have it come out if you're willing to relocate it. I don't know. It's kind of seems like a lot very quickly. And even coming from the other direction, you could just totally block the reserve sign
Yeah.
if you're traveling westbound, so.
And we did actually ask them, and I know it was a long shot, but we asked them to reach out to the reserve to see if they could be party to that sign, and of course they didn't want any part of that. But they did try to reach out, and just for context, the reserve was actually supposed to be the original name of the whole development, and that's why it's located there, and then the apartments basically took on that same name. So, you know, it's somewhat unfortunate, but that's the situation we're in. And they did put up a sign. They were the first ones in. This building was the first one in this area for those buildings, and they did put their sign in there originally. So I'm not sure what change of heart was. I think it was new ownership that came in, but. I did offer that suggestion. They didn't really want to take it, but that may be a different option now that they know that their request would be denied. They may have a second thought on that. I'm not sure where the applicant is. He was aware of the meeting, so I'm not sure what happened. Seniors, then a memory care. Continuum of care kind of a thing.
Full circle of life, yeah.
Hey, Jack, what's the height of the reserve sign, and is there an opportunity to combine the two?
There's really not an opportunity to combine the two because the other issue is here, if you zoom in closely, you'll see the property line runs right through basically that edge. So it's hard to kind of make it out on here, but the reserve sign is here. So that's located on this other property. And so they would get, and that's actually not even owned by the reserve. That's owned by Lakeside Development, who actually owns this full vacant parcel in the front, which eventually will probably want a sign for whatever happens in that location. So they would need not only Lakeside's approval, they would also need reserve's approval. The height of the reserve sign is fine. That meets our 6-foot height requirement, but the reserve sign itself is at, I believe, the 50 square feet, so you couldn't make it any bigger because that's the limit. The story point sign is actually smaller than the code allows, but it's taller. It's taller. It's by a foot taller.
Okay. Would it ever be acceptable, or would they ever entertain putting it on the building? Facing west?
That was the other suggestion we had, was to kind of fill that gap with the wall and put it there. Let me get to that picture again.
Yeah.
Just put it on this wall itself and have a sign here, but then they feel like driving down the street you won't see it until you're right on it. So they want it perpendicular, which it makes some sense. So that's why we felt kind of integrating it off this corner somehow, incorporating it with that wall. And then, years ago we asked them for some landscaping up here. Obviously that didn't take very well, so there's nothing here now. So I think this whole thing could be spruced up a little bit with a sign and some nice landscaping in front of the sign, in front of the wall.
Could it be actually on the building face?
You could have, you're allowed a wall sign, yes. That's a tough building. Other than there, it's not a lot of good spots on the rest of the building to put one. I mean, I guess.
Yeah, they could put it on the siding
if they
right above the reserve sign.
I was just going to say, what if they put it on the west side of that small building? Gosh, that would,
Yeah, they haven't requested any building signage. I think, again, they feel they need to have that view from the road so that when you're driving you see it clear, and I think anything parallel they think is not going to work.
Understandable.
So
I
Is it-
like, oh, I'm sorry.
I need to be acknowledged.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Is it an official request that they're asking, or is this
Yeah.
for, okay, well,
This
I
is an
think we're
advisory.
pretty much in agreement that we're probably going to deny it. So I think I would make that motion, but do we need to also then provide them some guidance? I think, are you getting what you would be able to come back to them with?
That option of coming off that wall is warranted, where they may be able to put it here, and maybe, we require a 10-foot sign setback, but the reserve and others in town center, we allow them to go to 5 because we also require the buildings to be no greater than 10 feet off the setback, so you can't fit a sign technically. So I wouldn't have an issue with them coming off and being 5 feet or even maybe 4 feet, so that they do have a little bit more exposure as they're coming down that road. But I think it should be integrated into this wall and then kind of built in architecturally to match. If the commission feels that way, I can portray that message back to them and give them that option.
Well, that or some sort of wall sign. If they're allowed a wall sign, there's a wall facing west. That's very visible.
Yeah.
It's probably not preferred from a design standpoint, but they might be able to do something. It would be higher. Well, we could either vote to deny or we could also vote to table it too.
Yeah, that was my recommendation, would be to,
Table
you know,
with the direction to
vet
work
what
with
we
staff
want
more.
and give as much direction as we can to staff, but then table this. It doesn't sound like we've got, if you're in support of what's coming forward, just vote no on the tabling and then make a separate motion to approve. But it doesn't sound like we've got that, you know, that motion moving forward tonight. So tabling would benefit the applicant and the fact that it could just come back forward and get removed from the table for a different location based on our direction. Have we vetted it thoroughly enough, Jack? Do you have enough direction for the applicant?
If anyone wants to talk, now's the time, because as soon as he
That was an email.
moves the table, it's non-debatable.
Right.
Commissioner Barnes.
One minor point on the side is, I hear that there's no proposal for the sign to be located upstream of the driveway.
Correct.
It's not their
Yep,
land.
it's not their land.
Not on there, and that's fine, and I guess it's the challenge with the adjacent property someday being developed. Where I'm coming from is simply that it would be highly undesirable for the sign to end up over in that area because of the blockage of the driveway.
Yeah, I mean, at one point, my guess is that when this site develops to the west, they're gonna probably propose another sign over here, but I think they're gonna want that sign for whatever business that's going in there, and they're not gonna wanna share it, so. Yeah.
All right, I'll make a motion to table.
Second.
Motion and a second to table. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? That item's tabled. Announcements. You guys get next month off. So we're not going to do planning commission the week of Thanksgiving like we normally do. We're going to defer that to it's the following week, or is it 2 weeks?
4th, I believe.
4th of December, yeah. So we'll do that one a little early and keep away from the Christmas holiday, and we'll give everyone the week of Thanksgiving off. So we'll see how that works this year. That was my one gift to the Planning Commission this year, was combining those meetings, and I don't have to drive back from deer hunting just to go to a meeting and then drive back up for the rest of deer hunting. So that's our only announcement. And do we have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned.